both Sandra and I had a pretty difficult day. We both had our share of moments that required hugs, I guess you would say.
That's exactly right.
And for me, mine came earlier than I expected, pretty early on in the morning. I came to the detention center expecting to do a bond hearing at 11 and was told that my client was no longer on the docket. And so instead I met with a woman that Sandra and I had a hearing for yesterday. And she was basically trying to make the tough decision whether she wanted to remain in detention in these horrible conditions or return home to Guatemala. And she was asking me what she should do, and I know as attorneys, probably many of you watching this have heard that question before, what should I do? But in this situation, that was an impossible question to answer. I don't think she has any good option. Staying here in this detention center is unthinkable, and it's also unthinkable to return to a situation of horrific violence. And she ultimately, after I tried to educate her on the pros and cons about all the options, she decided that she did want to be on the first plane back to her home country, and just started telling me what she was going home to. And it broke my heart, and I tried to help her then find a way to find some safety at home. And so we talked about different options of where she could go, how she could be safe with her daughter, her 7-year-old or 8-year-old daughter at home. And so that was just a really tough way to start the day.
I think that apparently, from what the more seasoned Artesia volunteers have been telling us, everyone has a moment like that where it all kind of just gets to you and you break down. And it was interesting that both Drea and I had that moment today. Mine came a little bit later in the afternoon when I met with a woman whose credible fear review I had assisted in on Tuesday. And so she showed up with her daughter. She has a domestic violence-based asylum claim, which perhaps if she had come to me in my office back in DC and I could sit down with her for a few hours and take her declaration and get an expert report and develop a fantastic legal theory and pull in all the resources, would be one that I could win. But I got, as her little girl was looking at me, I got with like these big eyes, and she was really excited to see me and everything, and she had actually drawn me a picture. I got this overwhelming sensation of helplessness. And as I sat there and talked to her about the next steps for bond proceedings and then asylum, I kept thinking about the mountain of challenges that this woman faces, having to put together an asylum claim like this from within the detention center. So that's when I had my moment.
Eventually I found out that my bond hearing actually was going to happen. And so the ICE agent came into the trailer and said, "Dree Culleby, your case is up." And I just basically had to gather all my things and run on to the next trailer to do this bond hearing, which ended up being over 3 hours long, essentially a mini merits hearing for this asylum seeker from Guatemala. And she did fantastic. Her testimony was incredibly detailed and compelling and very credible, and I felt that she couldn't have done any better. before the hearing started, the judge notified us that there were congressional staffers observing, as well as DOJ representatives, whatever that means, in the courtroom, and had to have the respondent, my client, accept that before moving forward. And she didn't have a problem with it, so I was kind of conducting this bond hearing knowing how these have been, the theories that have been posed by DHS in these hearings here in Artesia, with that in mind, and I tried to make the most of it. Unfortunately, she did get granted bond, which is great, but it was granted at $15,000, and which is a pretty insurmountable challenge for her.
We can argue all day long about policy concerns and about respect for our immigration laws, but then there's also the reality, which is that people have to survive. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of down here, just people trying to survive. And I think that's why it wears on you, because it's just story after story after story, and then the insurmountable odds of putting on some kind of a claim while in jail.
Hopefully the system will change, and we'll all keep fighting, and hopefully we can make a real difference.